Okay, November 7th, 2019 already. We are being video cambered and recorded. Looks like we have a new recorder.
Well, it's a new old one.
New old one. First thing on the agenda. Amendment to our subdivision rules and regs on our wet basin. So, how do you want to,
Someone has to read it into the record.
where's
The notice is in Russ's,
Russ?
to the right over
Public hearing notice. In accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 81Q, the Raynham Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, November 7, 2019, at 6 p.m. at Raynham Veterans Memorial Town Hall, 558 South Main Street, to consider the following amendments to the Raynham Planning Board rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land in Raynham, Massachusetts, last revised date of April 17, 2014. Amend Section 8 Design Standards, specifically Section 8.1 Stormwater Management, and add a new Section 8.4.1 Constructed Stormwater Wetland, CSW. Any person wishing to be heard or interested in the proposed amendment should appear at the time and place designated. A complete copy of the amendment may be viewed at the Raynham Town Clerk's office or Planning Board office, 558 South Main Street, Raynham, during regular office hours. Raynham Planning Board, Daniel J. Andrade, Chairman.
Thank you. Seeing we have a full house tonight, looks like we have a lot of input. So we'll start with Steve. Why don't you get up to the podium? We've worked on this for quite a few weeks now. We have some new input from the Board of Health, and I'll have you start it off.
Sure.
Review it. Ed Buckley, you can just give comment about it, Mr. Buckley putting his comments in, and then we'll go out to the audience and see what...
Sure. For the record, Stephen Ventresco with Niche Engineering. And so this constructed stormwater regulation, as you had mentioned, we've been working on with Ed Buckley, the Highway Superintendent or Highway Director, and yourself, and we've gone through a couple of iterations. And what you have in front of you is the latest, which is dated October 18th. And this will allow for the construction of stormwater wetlands to be used in areas where there's high groundwater and poorly infiltrating soils. I think this will be a positive addition to the regulations and will allow for the construction of the wetlands in a regulated, controlled manner that would allow for this wetland system to become its own biohabitat and be a diverse area where not only controls stormwater but also creates a habitat for creatures in the area.
All right. And you had a question. Well, before I get to the question, we have a letter from Board of Health. Did you get a copy of that letter?
I did, and I reviewed it, and the Board of Health agent had some comments requesting that there be some kind of operation and maintenance plan, which I think we have included in the revised regulations, so that has been covered. There was a suggestion to put a fence around the basin, which is also in the regulations, so that's something that we have included. And then there were just some recommendations about putting in vegetation management that would allow or create a perimeter around the basin, which would help with the shoreline and as far as not allowing erosion occurring at the edges where the water would, meets the basin. I think that's something that is part of the operation and maintenance plan, and I think it's something that would be noticed during construction, and I think that's something that myself and the landscape architect or wetland scientist would make note of, and that's something that would just happen naturally during construction. We certainly wouldn't allow that basin to be turned over to the town if there was considerable or any type of erosion occurring without it being fixed.
So I did notice he did suggest possibly increasing our maintenance fee from $500 to whatever.
Yeah.
He didn't mention how much, but he did say maybe because of additional maintenance. My suggestion on that would be, I think we need to get Mr. Buckley's input for future, what he feels maintenance, all the information that I have read and gathered on it. We have to do maintenance on a regular basis, and I feel we have to do a lot more mowing on the dry basins that
Yep.
we've been putting in than we would a wet basin.
Correct. At least twice a year.
In our discussion we had with Ed, he mentioned from the letter that he received from DEP stating, all of the pros and cons. One of them was increased maintenance, and I said, what are you gonna mow? Besides getting around and making sure the banks are trimmed back.
Yep.
So once he added that clean out, the manhole, I think that is gonna take care of a lot of his maintenance for any sediment.
Agreed. Yeah, the storm scepter or the water
Yeah.
quality unit, I should say.
So on the money part of it, I think we run that by him.
Yeah.
And then we would have to have a separate hearing on increase in fees anyway, so.
And it might make sense, and I don't know how long that fee has been established.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
we
might
haven't
be due
increased
for an
fees on
increase.
that type of thing for quite some time. Plus, which was something else that came up in another meeting related to planning board, was that I found out that he wasn't receiving his basin money. He was receiving it sparingly, as he apparently, when, somebody said, oh, here's some money for you for clean out some basins, and the rest of the money, it is in an account, but I believe, and I did mention to him that we do have over 100 and something thousand, I believe, in the account.
It's just not getting to him.
And when he was asking for a new mower to maintain these basins, I said, well, that's where the money should come from.
Yeah.
It shouldn't go to capital planning, it should go coming out of that money, so that's another.
Agreed.
But anyway,
And so I do, Mr. Chairman, I do have one amendment, and that would be under item L, I believe, which is the water balance equation. And speaking with another engineer, we had discussed that maybe this calculation, given where we are in the country, giving it southeastern Mass and Massachusetts in general, where we receive 42 inches of rain per year, and it's fairly consistent, that maybe this water balance might not be necessary, even though it's in the stormwater handbook. Maybe that's more appropriate for other regions of the country, the West or Midwest or something, where they don't get the same frequency of storms. We do have another item O that does request that as the basin's constructed and during the establishment period, that water levels are observed, and make sure that we have at least 10 months worth of water or water level within the basin in the course of a year.
So with that said, I just want to invite this gentleman with the gray shirt. I should remember your name. You've been in a few times, but if you could say a name for the record?
Sure, it's Evan Watson. I'm here tonight on this review as a citizen of Raynham. I am a professional licensed engineer. I work for Prime Engineering. I've had the
Now,
opportunity.
before you
Yep, go ahead.
continue on that, you are working on a project that is in.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get at right here.
Is in town, that's in
yes.
front of the board tonight.
Yep.
That's been in front of the board for some time,
Yes.
and we did reach out and said, ask for any input, whether it be from the public, general public, or any engineers, anybody that has additional information that's gonna make the bylaw the best that it could possibly be.
And
That's when you reached out to Steve.
Yep.
And
And with that being said, the project that we're presenting is still beholden to the previous regulations. Our design is trying to reach this. We took some waivers, requesting waivers to try and get on this. And I think that's really what sparked the new bylaw. Because in my opinion, most projects should be asking for waivers from the existing bylaw to try and achieve what you're presenting here. When I first put together the plans and did the design on the other project, when I read the bylaw, I was like, it's gonna, create a lot of difficulty, would create a lot of excess fill, and a lot of headaches that I wouldn't want to see the people in Raynham, as a town resident going through. So I think this is a very welcome thing to have in town, and to have allow for the use of this type of stormwater management practice that's allowed for by the state. And again, because I was working with Steve, it made it easy to correspond and go through some of the things he had here. I'm in agreement with just about everything here. We kind of went a little back and forth. I didn't see the final output, but mostly my comments were just, make sure that we don't increase the stormwater, the same thing that we always do. Everything basically being in accordance with the state regulation. My comment was really about that thorn weight calculation. I've done it before on multiple projects, and it's more of a regional calculation versus a site-specific calculation. And in southeastern Massachusetts, you're never going to have an instance where you dig a hole into the water table and it doesn't become a wetland. I mean, if I leave a tarp in my backyard for more than 2 weeks, it becomes a wetland almost. So my only other comment, I thought it might be a little much to involve landscape architects and all that type of stuff, but if the town wants to have that involvement to make sure that everything's grown up, I suppose that's okay. Me personally, I think it's a little much. It's not asked for in the state regulations to have landscape architects, but the town of Raynham does have some bylaws that are trying to make the town look nice and our neighborhoods look nice. So it by that
Well,
point, it makes sense.
and with that also, I think for people that are watching, years ago, we did have wet basins in our bylaw. And when Richard McCarthy was here, we met on it. And I believe it was back when Marty Newfield got bit and had passed away from,
lady as well.
yeah. So people were getting triple E and infected, and I think at that time, the selectmen had input about, what are we doing with these basins, and what we knew then and what we know now are two totally different things. The problem with not allowing these, in my opinion, is all these subdivisions have to be elevated so high, not because of the high water that's on the lot, because by the time they're done, they have to be 2 feet from the water table anyway, but it's being based on the elevation of the pipes in the road. So everything has to be raised. And when you're getting more involved with low-impact developments, it totally just throws that out the water.
It's the opposite of
It's
what's
just
asked
totally
for,
the
yeah.
opposite. And everything that is anything for the last at least 8 years, low-impact developments, if you're not part on that journey as a town, then you, in my opinion, from what I've been reading, we're missing the boat. So that's where this came about. So, Steve, nobody in town on this board influenced you,
Absolutely not.
and you're not being influenced by your applicant?
No.
Somebody you're representing, we asked for your input.
No, not at all, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide input. So
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Bob, any input? You've seen this thing going back and forth.
They covered everything, and I was not influenced either. Nobody-
Just check and make it, well, you have nothing to say, so.
Yeah, and just for the record, so this is based on the current stormwater handbook regulations and the requirements, and it's one of the pieces that's allowed under the
Well, and the
regulations.
reason why I bring that up is, one, we do have an applicant that's gonna be in front of us tonight. It's
Yeah.
been in front of us for the last 6 or 7 months.
Yep.
And without this, he would have to elevate that entire site.
Correct.
So it was, kind of brought in the forefront as, do we want a nice-looking cluster development, or do we want to continue down the path that we've been going? And that's how this came about. And we did hire a contract, sign a contract with you to improve our rules and regs, and this was just step one.
Correct.
So I just wanted that,
Yeah.
put out there so there's no, Burke,
This L that we were talking about, the applicant shall provide a water balance, and then O, during construction, the applicant shall provide yearly reports. I presume that those are both things we can waive under the right
Well, we were gonna just take
circumstances.
L out.
We're going to take L out, and then,
We're taking
yeah.
L in its entirety out. Hopefully our goal would be to do our rules and regs in the future, so we don't have to waive a whole ton of stuff. Because right now, we waive things that should just be standard.
Correct.
When you're reading a waiver list in front of a room full of homeowners who are having a subdivision next to the house, and we're reading 10 things off that shouldn't be waivers, it just makes it, seem like, you're giving away the house. So L, O, yes, we can, we're gonna keep O in there, and that could be something that, anything on the regs can be waived, but
Exactly.
O is an item that, if it didn't fall in there, would be, anything else on that?
No, that's it.
Russ? John? Questions? Chris? Chris is our only engineer on the board, and Maureen, have we received any information for Chris's input?
No.
I do have one question.
Yes.
Item N, where it says wetland scientist, would that be the same thing as the design engineer?
No, it would be different than,
So a separate person?
It's a separate
Has
person.
no connection to the project?
well, they would have a connection, and they would be someone that has knowledge and has experience, same thing. Constructing wetlands, wetland mitigation, if they had to construct a wetland, they would know the soils and the plants.
So another design engineer?
Another design engineer, almost like a landscape architect. They may know some things that maybe a landscape architect doesn't. Landscape architect may just know only about plants, and then the wetland scientist would know more about soils, and they would work together.
Now, hopefully that is, when I was looking at that originally, I'm assuming that's coming out of the same office.
It could be out of the same office. It could be another consultant brought in, under, for instance, through Prime Engineering, if they wanted to.
In your experience in that field, though, does one go hand in hand with the other?
They can, yep. There are people out there that can do this type of work. And so a wetland scientist could design and implement the plantings and all of this, or a landscape architect could. I've seen them do it.
So, we'll see how that goes. Again, the most important part in one, obviously, so we can maintain less fill and coming into the future developments, but also, people saying, why would you possibly be introducing wet basins now when we have triple E, such a factor? And the reason why we do have a landscape architect is because those are the important things to keep the growth and the habitat, all of the things that we need to keep these things maintained and to be safe. That's our opinion is gonna be the specialist.
Yep. Agreed.
So, nothing else from the audience? Nothing else from the board? Make a motion that we approve the new wet basin bylaw excluding L as in Nich's outlined report.
Of October 18, 2019. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll provide an updated constructed wetland regulation. I'll put today's date on it as the approved date, and then strike L from the regulation.
Yes, and what I would
send it
like
to the board.
for you to do is, now, we didn't eliminate anything out of our book. We're not eliminating what we have now for basins, dry basins.
Correct, that's correct.
We're
Adding
adding this.
Just this, yep.
Why would somebody want to do, it's nothing to do with this, but why would somebody want to do what we have in our regs now?
Why would they want
Versus
to?
doing a wet
versus doing
basin.
this? It's site-specific, so if there is a site that has well-draining soils and low, water table is low, then they
So-
want to do that basin, and it's just,
And they
it's
would,
cheaper
and they wouldn't have to go into all the other
And they
stuff.
wouldn't have to go
Okay,
into all the other
so
stuff.
that's gonna stay, and,
It's good to have options for your stormwater control.
yeah, okay, very good. So, with that done, anything else on that? Nope. Next, Mr. Brennan, bond for Carlton Street plan. And site plan. John, you want to give these bills down to? And site plan, 217 Broadway, 217
Yeah.
Broadway's off,
Off the list,
just,
please.
you're not doing that. So bond for Carlton Street plan.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I just wanted to address the board on Carlton Street. I think you all remember that. It was a extension of Carlton Street. It was an old paper street that Michael Keith extended. It's about 380 feet, and he ended up with 3 lots on Carlton Street. We came before the board a couple of years ago, and you allowed him to get occupancy permits on 2 of the lots, provided he created a homeowners trust to take care of the road, and you're holding the 3rd occupancy permit pending completion of the road. I believe the road's all done except for top coat. Now, we've been in before the board within the last several months talking about connecting Carlton Street to the new subdivision on the end of Sandy Hill. So Mr. Keith really doesn't want to put the top coat on that because we will be bringing that subdivision in probably within the next month or so for the definitive process. And to put the top coat on that now, if the board were to consider any improvements to Carlton Street in order to connect it with Sandy Hill, it might just all bend for naught, the top coat and some of the work. So, what he's proposing is to substitute for that condition that the board put on it, that he not get the last occupancy permit pending, which is now down to the top coat, that he substitute a bond for that work. And he has an estimate for, it's about 380 feet of pavement. He has an estimate from a company in Brockton for $13,650 to complete that top coat. So rather
How
than
long is the road?
380 feet. So he had an estimate in 2016 to do it. It was only $9,000, but now 2019 it's up to $13,600.
Holy cow, I do a driveway, 50, 60 feet, it charged me $6,000. 7,000, seems pretty
It's
cheap.
18 feet wide, so the estimate's 380
Driveway's only
feet by
15
18
to
feet.
20.
So what we'd like, he's got the other house there. The 3rd house is, the carpets are going in now, so it's almost ready to go. But rather than put that top coat down, because I think there'll be some focus on Carlton Street from the board when we try to tie the 2 roads together, he would substitute a bond for that condition. The covenant's actually been released. It was just a condition that was put on at one of the meetings. And then allow him to get the occupancy on the 3rd house and submit the bond to the town.
Well, he is, this is triggering from the next subdivision that he's gonna be coming in filing for definitive.
Correct. You may recall we were going to connect the 2. The board
So if
didn't
he's
like
saying
the
that
dead end.
that 300-something feet's only gonna cost him 15,000, you put the 30% contingency on it, and, members of the board, how about if we hold off on this until after the next subdivision comes in for the definitive, and we hold a lot on there?
Well, the one we're looking to release now, it's done. The carpets are going in today, so he's ready to move into that. So we couldn't hold the occupancy permit until we bring the other subdivision in. We could put the commercial bond on, and then if you wanted to switch the bond for a lot in the other
I was
subdivision.
gonna add the lot and a bond.
That
I mean,
would be $70,000, $80,000 of value.
Guarantee we'll get it done. What's, so what's that come out to?
15 with the 30%?
Yeah.
That's about, it's 19,500.
300 something feet, what would you normally put on for your, if you did a review on it?
I was thinking 30 to 40 for that length of road. Is there any other work needed to it?
I don't know, Bob.
The preliminary as-built might be of some assistance on that.
Is that, now that came in, that's a private, is that still considered private?
Yes, it is.
It's going to be a private road.
By
So,
the homeowners association.
He has the association in place. Other than the top coat, there's some minor landscaping to do on the shoulders of the road. My suggestion would be you could hold a lot when the next subdivision comes in place. Mr. Brennan, is it going to be a cash bond or is it going to be a surety bond?
Surety bond.
So it's pretty simple to, you can have a 30,000 or 40,000 surety bond. It's not, doesn't affect the cost of, it's not like he's going to have to come up with 25,000. So if you wanted to have a whatever number bond, even if it's higher than what what he's proposing that the final cost is, and then when he comes through with the definitive plan, you can put more restraints on holding a lot on the next phase until this gets done.
well, how would you feel if we did 30,000 on the road and 10,000 on miscellaneous stuff that needs, so we asked for $40,000?
Yeah, I'd like cash more than surety, but we'll have to take surety if he wants to do it that way.
Well, that's why I say, if he was coming up with cash, then I would look at it being a little differently, but
Right.
if we say, 30,000 for the pavement and 10,000 for landscape and miscellaneous, if that was a private road, then that means Bob and myself, or we didn't involve Nitch, I'm sure, so we'll have to take a ride out there and make sure everything's done according to the, the plan, and we can always release the 10,000 if all the miscellaneous stuff's done without the blacktop. But again, it's gonna be a bond, so whether you put up 30, 40, or 100, it doesn't matter.
So premium must increase.
Yeah, your premium might go up a little bit, but would you like to argue about the premium?
Sure.
Okay,
How much is it?
I don't know.
I don't either.
So.
All I know is it goes up. That's
Yep.
all I know.
All right,
Difference between
well, he
30 and
has,
40.
he has every right to come back, and you're coming in with the next subdivision. If he doesn't want to pave and wants that lot released, then I think that would be my recommendation. I think it's fair.
I think it's fair, too.
If I was a builder, I wouldn't be squawking about that. So, we make a motion that we release, I would think that would be Lot 3 on that plan, Bob?
It's across the street.
53-2. In the subdivision, it would be lot 3, yes.
So, we release on the original order of conditions for exchange for a $40,000 security bond.
The-
30,000 for pavement, 10,000 for miscellaneous, so if at any time Bob and myself go out there to do a inspection and find that all the miscellaneous items besides the pavement is completed and he wants to change that to a cash bond, then he can come back in front of the board and do it at that time, but
The memo that, reflecting that the board did this is dated September 1st of 2016, and that's when you board released the other two lots. The covenant you let go. This was just a memo to the file, actually, for approval of both the road completion and proposed homeowners association. So if you reflect it, you're modifying that September 1st of 2016 memo, I think. It wasn't an order of conditions or anything.
okay, so why don't you, do you have a copy? You can give that to Maureen, and Maureen can, just so she can go through the file and add that to our motion.
Or you can send it to tomorrow, maybe, or something. Just so I get one back, that was the only one I had.
Okay.
So, you got that, Maureen?
I do.
So that motion was made for discussion, seconded. Russ, all in favor? Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
Can I ask a question? What's the 217 Broadway?
It's nothing. Oh, well,
That's the old car wash?
to discuss that property, but it's not ready yet.
That's the old car wash, isn't it?
No, it's one over.
One over?
Mr. Mike Delaney's property.
All right, next, Cornerstone, lot release. Step up, state your name for the record.
Sean Cons, Shamrock Realty.
And you're looking for a lot release?
Correct.
We're holding one lot for completion or something?
Right now, yeah. So I'd like to put up a bond to release the third one.
Okay. What isn't done out there? Bob, do you have,
He's, same as what we just discussed, he needs a top coat and some minor landscaping. Most of it's been completed. He has submitted an as-built plan, I believe, and all we need to do is wrap this up with a Form J. I think he discussed that with Maureen the other day, but he's ready for all three lots to be released. If he puts up the bond, then we can review it when he gets close to his, completion of his third house, but with the bond, we should be pretty safe.
okay. You have an estimate on your completion, what you feel the completion is?
Yeah, I have it. Do you have it, Maureen?
Yeah, that's 15,000. And how long is your road?
My road's 600 feet.
$600 feet, 15,000, wow.
You might want to call that guy next time.
God, I'm telling you, I'm getting jammed. Okay, so we have a road, 600 feet. I took a ride through there. I think with what you had to work with, did a very nice job, looks good. It's definitely rocky country. And members of the board, are you putting up a cash bond, or are you putting up?
Cash bond.
You know numbers better than I do for, well, maybe you don't, for what,
Well, I'm
payment's
just,
going,
I'm
but-
just surprised at what, the prices are coming in at. Steve, I know you didn't have any involvement, but 600 feet of road, if you were doing a review, you'd be 50 or 60,000.
Yeah, exactly. That's with the 30%.
Well, if you're putting up a cash bond, I'd be willing to do a $30,000 or just get a bond, a surety bond. Mr. Brennan? This isn't anything to do with you, but you said your client got a price in 2000, a couple of years ago, and it went from 9,000 to 15,000, so
Not 2,000, it went from, from
Nine to-
9,000 to 13,600.
Are you planning, when you planning on doing the top coat one? Because I don't,
When the house is, probably next summer.
okay, because you're not building all those houses,
I'm
right?
just gonna build one.
So you're building one, so you're dependent on other people to hopefully
Yeah,
finish and,
I plan on doing it by September 1st, so that's what I told them.
okay. All right. Well, I would say, if he's putting up a cash bond, $30,000 is a chunk of money I wouldn't want to take out of my savings account to. So if it's a cash bond, I would recommend 30,000. If you're gonna put up surety, then I would say that 30 is gonna go up to 50. So I would think you'd have either choice.
You don't need to know that right now, or?
No, I think we can make a motion. It's either cash for 30 or
Okay.
surety bond for 50. I think, and then whatever you decide to bring in is up to you. A lot of work to make 30,000, so I know you'll be good on it.
Mhm.
Burke, thoughts?
Is this land courted land?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, yeah. We ask you about your rule against perpetuities, but we'll pass on that. I'm sure they asked you. No, I don't have anything. 30, 50 sounds reasonable.
John?
Sounds good.
Burke? I mean, Russ? Starting to look like Burke from over here. Okay, so motion made, seconded,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
So you can decide.
Okay.
Just gives your options and whatever you want to do.
Okay.
All right?
All right, thank you.
All righty. All right. Raynham Preserve. Step right up. I'm gonna go get a sip of water.
Is this yours?
No.
No, that was stolen.
All right, at our last meeting, we had asked for you to get with Steve from Judith Nitch, to go through basic final items. Where do we stand? I see your letter, Steve, and you have only a few items and then the waiver requests.
Correct, and the waiver requests are new, and those were presented to the board on October 3rd, I believe. And so that list is reflected in this letter. And there, as you said, there's some minor items. I guess one of the bigger things is they provided a detail for a sign that delineates where the open space starts and where the subdivision land is, and so just a clarification, how many are they gonna put, at the boundary? Is it gonna be one per lot? Is it every 50 feet, 100 feet? So it's those kind of details that just need to be worked out. And then I don't know if Ed has any more comments. I haven't heard anything from Ed about whether there are additional comments that he's looking at for the subdivision or not.
Well, I hope by now, if he had any
I would hope that if he had any, he
comments,
would
he
have
would have put them in,
commented.
but I don't.
I've asked him for it, and I think he's all set.
He's all set, okay. I just haven't heard from him personally, so I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Okay, so a few details, but you have a list of 15 items on subdivision rules and regs.
And they're mainly for the board if they wanted to add conditions as far as, so one of them is, the hydrant spacing looks appropriate, but, just to make sure it's fine with the fire chief, those type of comments just to sort of finish off the plan.
The applicant has not provided a landscape plan.
The landscape plan is one that I know has been discussed, and I know that the applicant has been just talking with the tree warden as far as street trees. I'm sure it's something that could be conditioned if the board so chooses to provide just a sort of a lot landscape plan as a general thought of what they would be doing for landscaping.
Now, we did a 40-foot, is that in here, or did we vote? I don't think we voted on it. That's got to be part of this vote.
Correct.
But we did allow them to do a 40-foot layout,
That's correct.
so we don't have the same problem with the street trees Okay.
That's correct.
How far away are you from the street, these houses being located on average?
50 feet, I think, right? from
All right,
the-
so they're not the 25, what's allowed, they're all more than what's, because one of the problems, if you did kept them close to the road, because the bylaw does say you can have them, what, within 25 feet of the road?
Yeah, so the only time that happens.
So if you do them within 25 feet of the road, then we're going to be in the same problem. We allowed the 40-foot layout, but now, which is an item that we're going to have to look at when we do our regs on the cluster. Looking at these, the only other things that I see that are not in our regs, we can attach to the special permit, are going to be spacing of houses to be a minimum of 25 feet apart, not, the distance or 25 feet. But, you made those along the way, those changes. And I think we had talked about that,
Yep,
because again, that's going to be a grading issue. But in case this plan gets changed, I would want to add that to the under the conditions, under the special permit. That spacing is a minimum of 25 feet. Now, we didn't go 25 feet from the property. We said 25 feet from, I don't know, how, it's good. What did you do? I don't even remember what we discussed. It's been a month and a half, 2 months ago.
Yeah.
You have a property line that's going to be 10 feet off the house, say. How are you going to be able to raise? We talked about having the elevation of the foundation, having a minimum maybe of 5 feet from the road, but, I mean, we've discussed so many things. So the wet basin we took care of, which is basically so we don't have to bring in all the fill. So we don't want to go and see this with, 8-foot fills.
Evan Watson from Prime Engineering, representing the applicant. So I would think it would be a little messy if we imposed a distance between structures, only because if somebody later on wanted to come in with an addition, if they put on an addition before, and then the neighbor wants to put on an addition, he basically boxed them out and can't do any of that. So I think what we were saying is that we would comply with the setbacks, and we reduce the number of lots from 28 to 26 to make sure that we expanded all the lots, so that on the standard house that we have there, the standard catalog, the Long-Bill homes, all the houses are spaced out really nicely, and we can feather all the grading in fairly well. I think with the one of the things that you mentioned that you might be looking for is to actually not have to fill so much within, the top of foundation shouldn't be more than like 6 feet higher than the road or something like that. With the exception if there's a hill already there type of thing. So what we've shown here, the way that it's designed, now obviously we're not going to come in with these exact houses, but the way that the road is set up, the way that the lots are set up, I think naturally the way that it all comes in, it meets the goals that we were trying to achieve of the setbacks between the houses and the elevation from the road. But I think to set a distance between the houses, if this was a condominium without lot lines, I think that would make a lot of sense. But given that these are individual house lots,
Well, I take what I hear what you're saying. But we also have said from the beginning that this is going to be the model cluster development. What happens here is most likely going to be happening going forward. So what we decide on this is going to be our, again, we went and did a wet basin, just one, because it was time to do that, and two, this is going to be the first project that's going to have the wet basin. Our intent, or our whole objective of the wet basin is so we don't have to excessively raise existing properties, so we don't have these big hills around these houses. So if you have a house that's only 10 feet off the property line, and you're 6 feet, and you're leaving, you got a 5-foot or a 4-foot slope, I've been very clear from the beginning, that's what we're trying to avoid. So how do we do that? This subdivision gets approved, it can get sold next week, and, everything's out the window. We have to attach something to the special permit that allows your flexibility so they can build, obviously, not to these specific sizes perhaps, but we need to have some specifics on what you're willing to agree to. I mean, that's what the special permit's gonna be, a condition. It's not gonna be a condition on the subdivision, it's gonna be a condition on the special permit.
We could increase the side yard setback without too much strife here.
Well, I think we went over all that. This plan, the way this plan sits right now, I think the board was happy with it. We all agreed we were happy with it. My concern is, like you mentioned it, these configurations may change. Lot 12, Joe comes up and he wants this massive house, and as a builder, you don't care, you're making the money on it. Well, we're trying to control not only the use of how high, the looks, the appearance for everybody.
Nope, makes a lot of sense. I just didn't want to have a headache for, the town later on, to.
And I agree with you. As you're listening to you, I agree 100%. I don't even like what I just suggested about having that, because that would be a problem. That's why we should look at the plan and attach it to the plan, but then my concern is what's on plan is he's gonna be bound by this. Burke, you had,
Well, I was gonna say, I like the idea of a minimum distance between the buildings as opposed to a minimum distance from a lot line. We're giving you more flexibility.
right, on the, like right now, they can have, there is no restriction.
Hold on, Dan. Can you flip that?
There,
Hey, go ahead, Dan.
there is no restriction from the lot line, or what is it, 10 feet?
There's a 10-foot side yard setback.
10-foot side yard, so, you could actually be 20 feet, which, again, that's, if your house is elevated 6 feet out of the ground, 7 feet out of the ground, it's just not enough room to fill. And then that's
So,
where you're getting into the.
So I think it makes sense to have a distance between buildings, but to have the condition, like in the case in the future, we come in with proposed building permit plans all the time. We identify where the lot lines are, we make sure we're inside that building envelope. So if the case happens where we're looking at lot 11, and he wants to expand a little bit and add some living space to his house, but then Steve's client comes in and he lives on lot 12 and he's already expanded his living space. Now lot 11 is basically got blocked, so there could be
So that's where
expansion
you get,
wars.
that's where you get into a mess, because you're not going by property lines. You're allowing somebody else to dictate what you can do on your property if it's house to house and not by property lines.
Yeah, you see that sometimes with septics and wells. I don't want somebody to build there, I put a well over there and block him with my well setback. I think just having a set setback from the property line would make sense.
Yeah. Bob?
Are you talking about 25 foot, between houses, a 25 foot setbacks from the property line? Because right now, they have 20 foot between houses, it's as close as they can come. Are you talking expanding that to 25 feet, so you're adding 5 more feet, or are you trying to get 25 feet from the property line?
Well, I thought originally we were saying 25 feet from the property line. And then I thought he made, and I thought that worked, besides the ones maybe on the cul-de-sac.
Well, that would be more restrictive than what we have for residential A now. We have 20 feet for residential A. That's why I was looking.
Lee Castagnetti, counsel for the applicant. First of all, legally, you can't do that. You're changing your zoning bylaw to 25 feet as a setback, and your zoning bylaw is 10 feet. You don't have the authority to do that. So we can't do it within that context.
Under the special permit, we do.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
So under the special permit, we don't have that right?
Not to change your zoning bylaw, no. If you
Well,
change your
I'm not-
zoning bylaw, you need to go to town meeting and get your town to change your zoning bylaw, to change a setback. That's part of your zoning bylaw, 10 feet. And beyond that, if you have 100 feet of frontage and you change your side yard in this type of, you're asking for us to have to raise the houses. If you go to a 25-foot setback, you're leaving a 50-foot building envelope. A
Yeah, and I
standard,
don't think we- I don't think-
colonial
I
is a
don't think-
24-foot garage.
We've been talking about this for months, so
Yeah,
you,
I think the issue is more the elevations than it is the widths. And I think the issue of the 25 feet of separation between the houses is fine. We can certainly live with that. But the point that Evan's making, and I think it's a valid one, is something that you have to consider when you're talking about how you're going to incorporate this into your regulations. It's going to end up in a decision that's going to be buried at the Registry of Deeds, and 10, 15, 20 years from now, somebody's going to go looking to make that addition to their house.
oh, yeah, no,
And they're not
I
going to pick
agree
up on
100%.
that
That's what
decision.
I
They're
just-
going to
that's-
look at the zoning bylaw at the time and say, the zoning
Exactly.
says a 10-foot setback, and that's what I'm going to use. So that separation in the decision, it's all well and good, and we'll certainly live by it. But again, you need to be cognizant, down the road, it's not going to have any,
Well, and I
any
think-
real bearing, because it's just going to be,
Right,
it's
and
going to
well,
be lost.
I think what we said, in whether you like it or not, we said, we've been looking at this plan to be, this is gonna be almost what we agree with
Yes.
going forward.
Yes.
And,
And
so I
again,
think,
I think the issue of the separation between the houses relates more, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been here for all of this as well, and it relates more to
the
the
grading,
elevation
exactly.
between the houses,
It
so that the
does.
grading is softer and more pleasant, more becoming, more visually attractive as a streetscape.
Well, and plus you don't have the big runouts between,
Yeah.
you know, a 10-foot side yard. You know, you have these washouts
Mhm.
that's going out into the street, and it's, until that gets obviously established, and even after it gets established. If somebody's not maintaining their yard, then the town accepts the property, and then it's the town's problem.
Yeah.
And these cluster developments are done by special permit, so.
Yeah, but they're all going to be, but the side yards, even with the softer grades, you're still going to have that design that it's all going to be collected, between the lots, and then
Right.
and the sheet flow out into the street and be captured into the catch basins.
Well, one thing, just to make a point of talking about the bylaws and your regulations here, in the OSPD bylaw, it says that in the opinion of the planning board, you have to have a variety of size and shapes of the lots to create a pleasant streetscape, et cetera. So if we approve this and people look to it, that's, I think, one of the regulations you can rely on is that, you have a say in how the site lays out. And that's basically what the process that we've gone through. The other point I have to make is, just on this plan,
it's tough to appreciate the scale of the plan, but, these houses are 83 feet apart, 68,
Right, and then,
52.
and again, when we were discussing this plan, I was happy with this plan. I was happy with the layout, which we're trying to get to.
So am I.
We're trying to get to a, how do we make this? Russ, did you have input on that?
Is there a way to set like a limit on the slope, like the average pitch or something from the road to the front of the house?
I think
Can't
Bob
be more
brought it up.
than a certain amount, or if it is more than a certain amount, that lot you'd have to come back to get an approval, but as long as you keep,
almost like
less
the
than a
side
certain
banks
pitch,
are
like, go ahead.
3-to-1,
That's
2-to-1
and I-
slope.
And maybe
To
a
me,
different
that's what
pitch
I-
on the side yard, but,
Yeah.
so like, as long as I'm below this, I can just go.
And that's really what I thought all along that was the driving point here, was
Yeah.
exactly what you're hitting on, was that the elevation from the street and the grading is driven by that street elevation and not being as elevated as many of the houses at Raynham Preserve had to be. And, you know, you take every site the way you find it, and, you know, Raynham Preserve, you know, cutting across if you looked at the cross-section at the entry side of it to the lower side of the catch basins is a fairly significant change in elevation. So when you're working with a high water table, you know, and you're on those areas where you're trying to balance the road between the high point and the low point, and you have to maintain the high ground.
I understand 100%, and again, it probably should have came in as a conventional subdivision.
Yeah, maybe probably
because you know the land dictates it. You know, I think we look at these open space and, you know, preserving all this open land and this, you know, a lot. And so, you know, it possibly could have.
But that's a two-edged sword too, because, you know, for the reason I mean, your bylaws, as is the case with virtually every town that we do business in, their open space bylaw is stated right at the very inset. The introduction to it states that it's the preferred method of development for the low impact. But, you know, sure, as a developer, we like it because we're building less infrastructure and we're saving money on the cost of our infrastructure. But then by the same token, we turn that over to you as a town, and you've got less infrastructure.
I just went through a whole process with a low impact development that got denied. I spent a year doing it. I totally understand exactly what you're saying. You read the opening statement and you follow the low impact development. So, trust me, I know exactly what you're saying. I'm doing slabs so I don't have to deal with the changing, so I have a low impact development. And it got denied. So I know exactly what you're saying. That's why we've said, you know, I've been on the board for 18 years, and we need some fluctuation. Well, I've said it 15 years ago, we don't need fluctuation, as much fluctuation. It's either you can do it or you can't do it. Because this leaving people with their opinion, well, if they don't like the way you comb your hair today, their opinion's gonna change.
Absolutely.
So, I just want, my goal is to have our cluster developments look as attractive for the town of Raynham as a regular subdivision.
And function well.
And function well, and is less maintenance for the town because it's shorter streets.
Yeah.
That, you know, so it's a win-win. It's just we have to make that win-win work. So it's.
Can I make a suggestion maybe? I hear from pretty much everybody that everybody likes the way this plan looks, and we like the way it lays out. And I think it may even be in the regular Raynham Preserve conditions that should the elevations or location vary greatly from what's presented here, that we would have to come talk to you.
Well, I like what Russ said. It's what Russ said was, and I think Lee agrees, that's probably one of the easiest ways of monitoring the slopes. You come in with they come in with a plan to the building department. The engineer has on there, if it's a greater than what would you, 3-to-1 slope I see on road grades.
I would recommend 3-to-1.
So if it's more than a 3-to-1 grade, then it's something that, you know, raises a red flag to Bob, and then Bob gets, you know, highway involved.
I shoot for 3-to-1 side slopes and a maximum 10% driveway is what this design has. So if we're gonna exceed that, then maybe we need to talk to somebody about it, you know, come in and get special permission.
Okay, so, Bob, you were gonna get up and say something?
Sorry.
It's okay, you're the wetland scientist, so you can talk. No, I think your concern stems from what you see at the preserve now, where they're so close together, and they're so, the grades go up so high. Even now, the ones they're building now, they're now starting to do 2-car runners to reduce some of the fill, which they didn't on the first couple of phases. But what you have here in front of you is the design that they show you. There's an awful lot of front setback on these layouts that don't exist in the Rainier Preserve now. So,
well, that's what we said. We like this plan.
So based on the plan, if you make a condition that everything stays, the individual lots get designed according to this plan. If they get changed, then they have to come back for review. I think you've put your safeguards in.
Is that going to, when they bring in Lot 33 for a plot plan for you, isn't that gonna be,
It's more to look at, but
It's-
if you make it a condition, we'll just have to, make sure that we capture all the conditions.
So,
when we do the
again,
plan review.
if we, part of the special permit can be that the side slopes anything greater than 3-to-1, and what would you say, 10%
10% slope in the driveway.
Slope.
We never exceed 10%.
So, if that's something that we can put in that's real simple, as a standard condition, even on any subdivision, that, a standard condition, now it's just a print-in. And it's standard, now it becomes not an issue, everybody knows. That's what I'm trying to, it's not something that somebody needs a special permit for to do. If,
I would ask one thing, though, because these are sample, they're illustrative, the boxes are illustrative, so I just ask that it be substantially in compliance, so that at least it gives us the flexibility to do a
right,
different
because I know
footprint for the houses.
you're not gonna
that-
be stuck with everything will look exactly the same. No, and that's, and I don't, that's fine. And again, I think, if you come in and obviously, if you can meet those 3-to-1 slopes, what do we care? We,
And
which,
this plan, as Evan said, this plan is designed with those parameters.
all right, so again, I think it's good discussion, Steve, for going forward. I think, I said it many times that, I hate to use them as a learning
but-
for our new cluster development, but I think everybody on the board should agree that at least we're getting somewhere that's,
Absolutely, setting a standard.
I think is gonna be something that's gonna be clean and, something that developers can live with, and I think it'll be good for the town. So, Burke, can we get Raynham Preserve off our plate?
I would love to.
Can we move to, as part of the special permit, can we put in a condition that the side slopes be no greater than 3-to-1 with a 10% driveway slope? Can we put that in
The
as a
applicant seems to be able to
as a
live with that.
special condition? Because it's not in our regs, so it has to be a special condition. It's part of the approval.
And then, if it did exceed that, do they come back to us? or
No,
do
they
work
go,
something out with
no,
Bob?
they're gonna go to the building inspector, zoning enforcement officer, and then he'll.
He has the power
He has the
to-
power, he has the recommendation. If he thinks it's that bad, and if he doesn't want that responsibility, but I think it's,
Well, as a planning coordinator, I would take a look if it's a major change, and I think it needs to be reviewed by the board. I'd have them come back to the board for review. Other than that, individual lots, as long as they meet the criteria that you put in your special permit conditions, we can handle it through the permitting process.
that way there doesn't tie him up, and he, and again, it might be, if we ever get a different building inspector, maybe we'll change that, but Bob's since I've known him, he's.
So I'd recommend that you ask the applicant's attorney to draft some conditions along with a cover letter with all the waivers for our review at the next meeting. So if you want to continue having a discussion on what you'd like to have for conditions, and then they can come back the next meeting with a draft set that you can approve.
Certificate back.
Correct.
But the way it sits now, everybody's in agreement. This is a good layout, good plan. We're very thankful that you've hung in there with us to get this accomplished, because this saves us a lot of time on our cluster development. We've been doing two things at once. We've been doing our regs at the same time under your leadership from long-built homes. So we appreciate all your input. You as an engineer and a town resident.
Thank you.
You should look at running for planning board, although, no, because then you won't be able to represent anybody in town.
Yes, because it is a two-edged sword.
Yeah, that's a jabber. So I think we'll take Bob's recommendation. You good with that? We get that?
I
Yes.
do have just a couple comments on if we were going to accept Nich's letter as is, there's a few things.
Well, I'm
that we put
hoping
together.
between now and then, you even reduce that even down.
Yeah. Well, there was just, basically, everything in here makes a lot of sense. It's mostly, there's maybe 3 or 4 spots where it asks for a
Then-
cut fill analysis. I don't think we're making a decision on the amount of fill if it comes out to be 100 yards or 1,000 yards or whatnot. Typically, what we would do is take these plans, send them to our contractor. He would come up with an estimate.
And
of
that's
what
in our
the-
regs,
So we can provide that as a condition of approval without an
you know.
issue.
It's one of those, it's in our regs, he's got to put it in there.
No, we can do that, is what I'm saying. We can be responsive to that. The only thing, there's 2 items in here which I don't think
All right, so
makes
read it.
sense. Yeah, so one says outlet structures require slotted overflow T-weir. Our outlet structure is a T-weir, or is a T orifice. And then the last one is, says here about catch basins shall not be greater than 300 feet apart. So I do have a pair of catch basins that are greater than that, but there's a high point in between, and I'm closer than 300 feet from the high point. I just think Steve might have missed that. I talked to him on the phone about that, and he said that would be okay. So
Well, yeah.
just
And
those 2
and-
items we already.
And again, we've waived those in the past. If you, with the fill thing, whatever they can do, it's one of those, any excess fill that's gonna leave the site should be allocated for. So you're not going in there and,
There won't be any.
I know,
No,
I mean, but
this isn't a sham for a
Yeah,
gravel
no, I know.
operation. Yeah, for
years
sure.
ago, they used to do that and make a
Yeah.
cranberry bog, and then the
Right.
town had all these holes and around the,
Yeah, I could see
Not
where that
Raynham,
comes
but-
from,
Right.
those regs.
That's why
is-
they did
yeah,
it.
Yep.
So, yeah, between now and next meeting, your list should even be less, because we want you guys to continue getting it down, do the certificate of action. But I would give a couple of days.
Yeah.
Solve some things, get the list, and then do the certificate of action, and then you're out of here. And we might even, you might want to donate some time when we're doing our regs. If you're up to that, I think an extra eyes would be,
I'd be interested to look at any new regulation that comes.
yeah, I appreciate all the help you've given us. No, I wish I hired you for an engineer.
Want to talk about trees?
There is one other item that Steve had mentioned in his
Yeah.
letter about the phasing, and I just want to get your feedback and input on that, we requested to essentially to waive the phasing on the special permit and be allowed to build at whatever pace the market dictates.
I don't have a problem.
Yeah, we want to.
I mean, I would think we'd all want to just have it done as quickly as possible and get the road paved.
When
and-
you, right, and then we're stuck with it.
Yeah.
You have a problem with that, get the phasing?
We talked about that before, not an issue.
So, yeah, that's fine.
And the question of the landscape plan, we do show on our plans the limit of clearing line and the proposed street tree locations. We didn't pick out the individual trees. I think there was kind of a question as to how that was all gonna go down. There's no requirement in your.
I don't want to get away from street trees.
Can I? I'll add another footnote to that too, then. It's something we do in other towns, and something I recommend that you consider for your regulations when you do change them, and something we're going to put on the next version of this plan, and that is a 10-foot temporary, for us, we're going to put the temporary grading and landscape easement, and that's just in the right-of-way area for the, so we can grade when we do the curbing and the roadway and don't have a customer saying, don't touch.
After you sell.
Correct.
That's a
And-
great
But
idea.
also.
That's a great idea for the developer.
But also a street tree, permanent street tree
Right.
easement area. We are going to change the plan to put that easement on here. And this I'm bringing up in conjunction with my next item on the agenda that I'm going to be requesting of you, because I have some homeowners who literally threw me off their property and told me they were going to call the police if I put a flag on their property to denote where a tree was going to be planted. And I don't have that right. So it's,
you have the right because it was an approved subdivision.
Believe me, I've explained that to those homeowners, and they still said, if you put a tree on this property, I'll rip it out
See,
and
that's-
throw it in the street.
Yeah,
So
well, and that's
I just,
See, that's just, that's.
but at least if, and that's what I'm saying, though, at least if there was an
Yeah, I know.
easement on the plan and it was identified in their deed, it would be, I have that right. There's an easement there that I've reserved,
Right.
and I can plant in that easement. You know that going in. And we don't have that right now, so it makes it a very problematic situation, despite the fact that their deed is subject to, and very clearly stated, all the conditions in the certificate of action, special permits, and pointed out to them, and they're still adamant that if you come on my property with a tree, number one, I'll call the cops to throw you off, and number two, I'll rip it out and I'll throw it in the street. So that's what I'm dealing with. I know. I'm trying to put an attractive tree on your property at no cost to you, and tell them you're going to rip it out and put it in the street. Don't ask.
Go with the police when you put it in.
Well, that's gonna be something that we're gonna put on the zoning enforcement, planning court. All right. We're gonna, Steve, you're gonna have to, I don't ever wanna get away from street trees, and I'd rather reduce the road width.
Well, again, the fortunate thing, though, is, that this is out of 45 people. And listen,
I know,
you get all types, you get them as they come. But this is out of 45 homes, and it's three homes.
Right,
So
no,
it's,
right, well, it's, yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'm just curious, what would be, if we did an easement parallel to the right-of-way line, is that a 5-foot wide easement for tree planting, just to have on the plans? Is that
Well,
something
no,
that
it's
you
gotta
would-
be where our trees, normally our tree location is within the 50 feet.
Right, but typically the trees are placed outside the right-of-way on the lot, and so I think
Yeah,
the applicants.
because we're reducing down, in the
Right, so-
future, we're reducing on 40 feet, so they are gonna be on the front yards.
So you need an easement, and whether it's 5 feet or 10 feet, and maybe Mr. Castanetti could help direct what that width would be, but it's something that could be required.
Well, I think it would be a minimum of 10 feet, and taking into account that how much I think we have 3 feet on both sides? Or 1
Yes.
foot on?
No, it's 3 feet
Three-
from the back of any asphalt would be the right-of-way. Yep.
Okay. But you don't want street trees, I don't care what type of, even if you agree to this, to the less invasive, or less intrusive ornamental trees, you still don't want them any closer than, you don't want them 5 feet to your sidewalks.
No, that's why
You've all
it's-
seen situations, what
No.
happens, the root system will disrupt your sidewalks, and it's just gonna be a maintenance nightmare for the town.
Why
You're gonna have
can't,
sidewalks
on
that are a
every,
mess, and
when we approve a subdivision with conditions, and that has to get, the conditions, we always say, especially if it's a private road, we say we want to make sure it's registered, and recorded at the registry, and it has to be part of their deed. Well, why can't it be part of their, like you said, you gave them,
Oh, it's there, it's in there.
how much more,
Well, it's not much more you can do.
do you know what I'm saying? I mean,
If people don't want trees, they're gonna knock them down.
Yeah, right, even after you plant it and go.
And, how many people do you know who have a water view and there's too many trees and they disappear, although they're in the wetlands?
It's called vista pruning.
Uh-huh.
Been down that road.
Most people have, yeah.
All
I do think the easement, at least,
Yeah.
does give you somewhat better.
Now, when that easement,
um,
you're putting an easement
'cause-
there, but isn't that easement only gonna be good until the development is done? It's not gonna be an ongoing easement, is it?
I'd make it a permanent easement, yes.
Really?
Town can come
And you
put in a
can,
new tree if
and
they
you can
want.
grant it, and you can grant it to the town. You can reserve it to the
Reserve.
developer and the developer's successors, but the developer's successor is the homeowner.
Right.
So that doesn't really do anybody much of any good. But if you grant it to the town, and the town then has the right to enforce
Well,
that.
can you do,
and
you're gonna
that
do the
would be the-
certificate of action.
Yeah.
You don't have to attach it to this, but if you
Yeah.
can give us the wording and stuff, because I think that's something
Well,
we'll,
give the easement to the developer in the town.
Yes.
I think that'll be something
Well, the
that,
developer initially, the developer has to have it, because I'm the one that planting the trees. So obviously, if I don't reserve it to myself, I don't have the right to go on your
Right.
property and plant a tree. But, again, once they own it and then I'm gone, it doesn't do you any good for me to have it. I'm on to the next
Yeah.
thing, and, you're left with
All right,
having
so-
to deal with that.
you're gonna
So-
give us you're gonna give us that information. Thank you for that. And now we're gonna talk about trees for the next, what was the next over the preserve, the preserve. You had two things on for tonight, right?
You all set?
Do we need to make an action or anything on this?
No, there is no action. You're gonna come back. We're basically done with the Raynham Preserve project. I'm not closing it, because in case something from now until then changes, not closing the hearing, but we're all in agreement with this plan. Your slotted T, your T, whatever the T you guys are discussing, figure out which T it is. It doesn't mean squat to us. Yes,
So you want to continue it to the next meeting?
we'll continue this. Oh, I'm sorry, that's what you're.
Yeah, to close the hearing, or.
I'm
I
sorry.
request a
We're gonna-
continuance to the next meeting.
There you go. We're gonna continue this until November 21st, and we're gonna put you on for November 21st. There's nothing on. Where have we been putting you? You're down on 6:15. Yeah, we'll put you on 6:15. All in favor? Aye. All right, so that's gonna be continued until 6:15. Huh? Time to act. I think they signed something.
December 31st.
Yeah. All right, so, thank you. Now, did you have something else for the next thing?
Just the street.
Oh, talking about the trees? So, we're done with that?
No, I just.
Oh, you have more?
Well, no, just I'm asking for a waiver of the shade trees to
Oh.
plant the ornamental trees
That we discussed
in the.
last time.
Yeah. But,
And you went through, and you spoken to tree warden,
Oh, yeah.
Ryan
Oh,
Glavin,
yeah.
and you went through all that, so.
Oh, yeah, everything was discussed
To
and
make,
reviewed with
to
them.
make that official, I don't have the original condition. Do you have the condition on the plan number?
There's no condition, it's just, it was approved subject to your standard regulations for
All
street
right,
trees,
so
which
then-
says shade trees. So we're just looking for a waiver to be allowed to do one of the ornamentals that, instead of the shade trees. Yes, yeah,
So,
yeah, the group, it's in the letter, there's an
motion.
assortment of Cleveland pear trees, hawthorn trees, Japanese snowbell trees, ivory silk lilac trees, and blossoming cherry trees. There's actually only a handful, about a half a dozen of the cherry trees, because they were, the time of year was late for, I'm not an arborist, so I'm not sure why, but the other trees were perfectly fine, but the cherry trees were a little late in the season, that the nursery didn't want to
all right.
dig
so
them out.
Motion made, motion to accept trees as submitted. Discussion?
Well, so we're saying that the list he just gave, any of those would be acceptable?
Yep. Which are all.
And they're all the same, we're not, no issue on the distance apart, all
Right.
40-foot
They're all,
separation, and,
Flowering,
And
You
what
know,
did we decide on?
Bradford
There
pears.
just has to be one every 50 feet or
40.
something? 40 feet?
40 feet.
yeah, and that's
Okay.
gonna.
And
that's
as I had
gonna
said,
change,
I
too.
mentioned the last time that, and something you might, again, in your regulations, want to touch upon, that, when an engineer is doing a plan, it's fairly easy to plop a tree every 40 feet, but then when you
Right.
get out in the field,
It's not
and
realistic.
you're actually planting them, they're not actually going to be every 40 feet, but what we do is, we do the linear measurement and divide it by 40, come up with the number of trees, and then we fit them in, so some end up
Even
being
50 feet
25, 30
on a
feet
regular
apart,
road,
or
50
whatever.
feet is close on-
It is,
on
yeah,
trees, so
yeah.
That's, and,
It
you
is.
know, these are all the things that,
Yeah, 40's, as trees mature, 40's a bit tight.
yeah, it is. So, the motion was made to allow the list of trees for Raynham Preserve. It's probably the first time I said it right, Raynham Preserve. I think I've called it Bassett Knoll and everything else, something. Seconded?
I did already.
John seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. I haven't mentioned it, Russ, but you look good with a tie. You're all dressed up. You came in late, so you must have had a meeting.
There is one other request in the letter. It's
Hurry up.
Not the waiver. I will, I'll be as quick as possible. It just relates to, some of the lot owners have demanded that we not plant trees on their property. So I'm asking your permission for those who have been so adamant about not having trees on their property.
I myself am not willing to give that, permission tonight. I think you have let's get them, do what you can do, and then, it's not like,
I have.
I'm sure you have, but give us a list of the ones that aren't,
right.
Yeah, we can shame them on TV.
I will. I'd be happy to.
No, I want a list
But
of the names.
I'm in a
and the
really
addresses.
awkward position to take a
No, I
machine
know.
and dig a
I-
hole in somebody's front yard that's telling me.
Yes, I
that-
know, Bob.
Maybe as a happy medium, you can have those trees planted in a different area of the subdivision.
I like that idea. I mean, when they redid North Main Street, I come home one day and I got couple of trees in my front yard where I don't want them.
Yeah,
I pulled them out and put them where I wanted them.
first they did
But-
a land take, and they took all my yard, and then they planted the trees.
But, so I kind of see the other side of it too.
Yeah.
But this is
But
this
you're
isn't
on a-
wanting them somewhere. We've done that with our customers. We ask them if we're going to put the flags in. If you don't like where we've selected, let us know or move the flag to where you want it. And if we can accommodate you, we certainly will. This isn't that situation. This is a situation of don't put a tree on my property. Period.
I think it's
So-
the developers putting in the number of trees we ask for, and some people don't want it, he puts them somewhere else. He's done what
That
he
we
can
can
do.
we can certainly do that. I have no problem with that at all.
That's a good
It's-
idea. I like that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we've already done a number of them at both entrances.
Yeah.
That
So
more
we're
than make
gonna
up for
table
that.
that
so-
one. Just,
okay.
you do it,
Okay.
work it out.
All right. Fair enough.
Let us know.
I just want you to. I just want to make sure the board's aware of it.
Let
and that
us
we're
know
not.
which houses didn't want
We're not trying to
trees
bypass any
and-
requirements on our end.
No,
That's all.
that's
We're
fine.
just-
All right,
Okay.
that's it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Bob, Cumberland Farms asked for a continuance. Brooke, you have that letter? Was there a letter?
I think I gave it to you again.
Oh, you gave it to me?
I have an email.
Cumberland Farms. Sorry, I didn't give it to you earlier.
That's okay. We have an email dated November 5, 2019, from Douglas Troyer, who I believe is the attorney for Cumberland. Cumberland Farms requests that the public hearing currently scheduled for November 7 be continued to the next available public hearing, which I believe is currently scheduled for November 21. Currently discussing concerns raised by the highway superintendent concerning the project in his October 25, 2019 correspondence. Parties need additional time to finalize such discussions. Should you have any questions, let us know. And time to act,
December 1st.
December 1st, okay.
So put that on November 21st at 6:30 again?
Yep.
So 6:30, it's going to be continued until November 21st. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Bob, I know you had something outside of here. Sorry we chatted so long.
No problem. The only thing I actually have tonight is going to be a discussion with Steve on some modifications to the approved site plan for 5 Commerce Way, which is the hotel that's being constructed. The applicant is here now. He has brought some as-built plans for us to take a look and digest, and Steve has submitted a letter reviewing some of the items that have been modified to date on the site plan, so I'm going to defer the discussion to Steve so he can explain what's been changed and what's been modified. You want to give me those as-built plans?
Hi again, for the record, Steve Ventresca with Niche Engineering. So the building inspector asked me to meet with the applicant, and we met October 31st. We went over the partial as-built plan that was provided for the project that was prepared by SEA, and compared that to the approved plan, and the 4 items that are noted under item number 1, so A, B, C, and D. These are the areas that were modified or added from the approved plan. The first one is a shed that was added for maintenance equipment, and that shed is at the back of the site, so that would be on the, here, I'll come point it out. Here? Yeah, that, exactly.
I saw that there. Didn't know it wasn't supposed to be, but that's fine.
So that was not on the approved plan, and so that was added by the applicant after the fact.
All right. Anybody have a problem with the sheds? I did see it, looked like it was part of the project, so I didn't even know it was added. It's not an issue for,
Right.
if they have,
And it makes sense, they were
Access to
gonna,
it, it's-
yeah, and it makes sense for maintenance vehicles, it's
Yep.
not, they're,
all right, go
whatever.
ahead.
The next one is the building finish floor is approximately 1 foot lower, this was noted by Bob, than the approved plan, and this caused the sidewalk at the back of the site to be higher than the building, and so a certain section, I can point that out.
But the building's all concrete, right? Or is it?
So it's this piece right here.
Wood frame.
But it's against the foundation, isn't it?
So there's a gap here, back of sidewalk obviously is here, and there's the face of the building. So there's about a foot, 18-inch drop in this area right here, from here to here.
Oh, in the sidewalk.
So this, right, so you come to the edge of sidewalk and there's about a foot and a half
Does it
drop.
meet all handicap accessible
It
and
does.
codes and everything
It
else?
does.
Then I don't
Okay.
think we,
So what, yeah, so what the applicant decided to do from the back of sidewalk to the building, just below the cladding of the building, they're gonna put stone and angle it down. So it's not a
no
drop hazard.
problem.
At the back of the building, again, because they lowered the building, there's the elevation drop in the back. It's a little bit lower. They still have a catch basin there. I would just, because it's lower, ask that they make sure that the drainage still, the water still flows out. Provide calculations on that, just to be prudent. So that was one of the conditions.
Now, is the drainage, they didn't change elevations though, did they?
Well, it's a foot lower, so the catch
every-
basin's
yeah,
lower,
that's-
everything gets lower, so I just want to make sure that the water can leave. I would imagine it is, considering the storms we've had recently, but it might be prudent just to provide a quick calculation, and SEA could do that if they were hired to do that.
In D?
And D, the approved plans had shown bollards at the entrance, at the drop-off, and so it's actually grade separated, so the drop-off
went
is
there
higher. Oh, so you did see
6
it?
months ago.
Yeah.
I might have even been 8 months. I think when they first built it, I was called to just take a ride through, and they were asking about balls, and I think I sent them to you. I said, don't, that's not. Huh?
That was my son.
Your son. Seeing you spoke, can you state your name for the record and who you are? Why don't you come right up, front row?
He's not gonna get it.
Well, he's only gonna, but I only want his name for the record. He's not gonna say anything else.
My name is Mahendra Patel from Pioneer Management. Mahendra Patel.
You got that?
But I want to ask him why he put the building a foot lower than he was supposed to.
You're asking the wrong guy. He doesn't know. You don't know how come the building's a foot lower than it was supposed to be, right?
There was a the way it was designed, the footing was lower than the grading.
Yeah, so that tells you nothing.
Miscalculation, is that what you were about to say?
Yeah. Okay, so,
Sorry, and so.
but
the la-
anyway, I
yeah,
started
the
saying, I took a
bollards.
ride by, and it's like, it's impossible to put bollards there because you don't need bollards.
You don't need bollards,
There's a
exactly,
3-foot hill.
exactly.
You
Exactly.
drive, they're not
You
gonna
drive
go
it to
anywhere.
the- Right.
They're gonna come in, and it's nice because it's like a valet. You
Yeah.
get dropped off, well, your
Yep.
parking's down here. So I
And-
I had
right.
sent them to Bob way back when and told him, so.
And they added stairs there, so, which
Yeah.
wasn't on the approved plan. So these are all minor modifications
Right.
that could be addressed on the as-built.
Yep.
Something that needed to be pointed out.
Okay,
And then the rest of my memo was just talking about items that need to be completed. And one of the applicant had requested that the wood guardrail, which is along the entry drive, be removed. But based on my observations out on the site, I think there's a portion of where the guardrail is that there's a drop-off. And it's a pretty significant drop-off, and I don't see why it couldn't stay in.
why do they want it removed?
I just don't think they want to install it. I just think that it's
Oh, it's not installed yet.
not installed
Oh.
yet.
Then I suggest, I don't know, I was gonna say if you're in town next time.
Bob and I drove through
Oh, you
there.
did go
and, yeah,
through?
We
We've
took
been
a,
several times
Yeah.
together. They did ask for that to be removed from the condition, but I think Steve and I agree that it probably needs to be installed.
Keep it. Okay, well, we'll go with what you say.
and then the rest are just items that need to be completed as part of the project.
All right, so Bob, what's your suggestion? Are we in agreements to give waivers on those, or do we wait until the final plan?
I just wanted to bring this to your attention so that you can deem these all minor modifications that could be handled on the final as-built plan.
Okay,
I'm concerned about the drainage, and if the building is a foot lower, do you think that's gonna throw calculations off? And
I don't think so. I just want to make sure that that it still works based on what was provided for the approvals.
and again, if you go back, whatever calculations they gave us, they could have given us 4 different sets of calculations, and because this has already been approved for the site, we don't do a lot of calculation determination, only on what they added, because of Paramount Drive kind of got a blanket approval,
Yeah, that's true.
so it doesn't really matter.
It's more about just making sure the water moves through the site and
And
not stick around.
you have as-built, so you're gonna get as-built of the drainage, so if you tell us this pipe's going uphill,
Yeah.
all right, we're
Yeah.
not gonna approve it, so I think.
Yeah. Fair.
Okay, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, no matter what they gave us for calculations, it's not gonna,
It's not going to
we're
matter.
gonna look at it and say, doesn't matter.
That's a good point. I'm just being my engineer itself, I guess.
No, I
Just,
understand. So I guess, all agreement, those motions, those are minor modifications? Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, sir, it's looking good out there.
Yeah.
You still gonna have that little patio on the side with the little fire pit, the gas fire? Oh, is it? I saw that I remember that on the original. That's a nice little feature, people away from home. Good. All right, no, we will. Thank you. We'd sent the bills down. Minutes, I wasn't here the last one, so Burke, you make
I
a...
make a motion that we waive the reading and approve the minutes of Thursday, October 17, 2019.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye. And Maureen, before I said that, I probably should ask you to take care of those couple little things we talked about?
I did.
Okay.
That was, I abstained from that last one because I wasn't here. I abstained from the vote, so it was 3.
On the minutes?
Yeah, on the minutes.
Oh, okay.
Correspondence, anything besides? That's a release,
That was in the,
what you signed.
in the
Yeah,
invoice.
that was the bond release, or monies, snow plowing, right, I saw that. Yeah, that's fine.
With it? Okay.
Yeah. It was all signed. Planning board coordinator, he's all set. Serpent,
I didn't attend the second meeting last week.
plans to be signed. Are there any more in?
There's one, the salt shed, the highway department salt shed is out there.
Call that a salt shed?
I think that's what it's called.
No, it is. I was giving Bob a hard time, Bob, I'm sorry, Ed Buckley, a hard time driving by saying, Holy cow, does the town have enough money to put salt in that thing? What a beautiful stick-built, man, and I tell you, it's worth every penny. Those guys have been out there, metal roof, they sprayed, a beautiful job for a shed. Yeah, but Ed kind of added a couple of lean-tos so he can put equipment under and put stuff under that's gonna, because he is pretty,
$900,000, wasn't it?
is that how much it was?
Allocated in the town meeting. $900,000.
Quite a shed.
So our next meeting is scheduled for November 21st. Make a motion to adjourn tonight's hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.